They called her damaged goods. That's what the man in the black hat said as he dragged her onto the auction platform. 19 years old, wrists bound, dress torn, face streaked with dirt and dried blood, and still somehow her eyes burned like a storm. Damaged goods! The auctioneer spat again, his voice slicing through the hot afternoon air. But she can cook, clean, and obey, if you can stomach the sight of her. The crowd laughed. Dust swirled in the wind, mixing with the smell of sweat, horses, and rot. Somewhere a crow cawed. Somewhere else, a man shouted a number. The girl, Clara Mayfield, stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. She'd stopped crying 2 days ago. There weren't any tears left. A voice in the crowd drawled, "What's wrong with her?" The auctioneer leaned closer to the men. "Sheriff's son said she's been handled rough. Got herself a bad reputation, if you catch my meaning." The men chuckled darkly. A coin clinked. $3. Someone yelled, "4." Another barked. The girl's hands trembled. Not from fear, from rage. And then the bidding stopped. Because one man at the edge of the crowd didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even flinch. He was tall, broad-shouldered, coat heavy with trail dust. A weathered hat shadowed his face, but his eyes, grey and cold as a winter morning, stayed fixed on her. Luke Carson. The silent rancher, they called him. Lost his wife and child 5 years back. Buried them both and never spoke much since. Folks said he had more ghosts than friends. He stepped forward, the spurs on his boots clicking slow and steady. The crowd went quiet. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a single silver coin, and laid it on the wooden crate beside the auctioneer. "She's coming with me," he said quietly. The auctioneer blinked. "That ain't enough, mister?" Luke looked up, eyes hard as steel. The man swallowed. "All right. She's yours." The rope around Clara's wrists fell. The murmurs rose. As Luke turned to leave, he didn't grab her arm, didn't push or pull. He just said, "Let's go." And for the first time in weeks, someone didn't treat her like a thing. The Carson Ranch sat 30 miles from Redstone Town, past the river and beyond the canyon ridge. It was a lonely stretch of land, wind, grass, and silence. Clara rode behind him, holding tight to the saddle horn. The sky burned orange as the sun bled over the plains. When they reached the ranch house, Luke dismounted and helped her down. "You'll have your own room," he said quietly. "There's food on the stove." She nodded, cautious. "You bought me," she whispered. "Why?" He looked at her, unreadable. "I didn't buy you," he said. "I bought your freedom." Then he turned and walked inside. That night, Clara ate slow, savoring each bite of bread and stew like it was gold. The wind howled outside. The ranch creaked. Luke sat near the fire, whittling wood, silent as stone. She looked at him across the room. The man who had paid for her without a word, who had said she was free but still kept his distance. His face was weathered, lined by loss, his hands calloused, his eyes far away. "Thank you," she said softly. He didn't look up. "Don't thank me yet." Days passed. She worked, cleaned, cooked, fed the horses. Luke barely spoke, but when he did, his words were kind, measured. He never raised his voice, never raised a hand. At night, Clara lay awake listening to the wind against the shutters, fighting the memories that clawed their way back. The sheriff's son, Jeb Calhoun, his breath reeking of whiskey, his laughter after he tore her dress, his father's threats when she tried to scream for help. "Keep quiet, girl," the sheriff had said, "else the whole town'll know you asked for it." Then they sold her like a mule to clear their shame. But shame has a way of haunting both sides of the gun. One night, she woke with a scream. The dream had been so real, Jeb's hand at her throat, the laughter echoing. She sat up trembling, gasping for air. The door creaked open. Luke stood there, shirt half-buttoned, holding a lantern. "You all right?" he asked quietly. Clara shook her head, clutching the blanket. I can't sleep." He set the lantern down, knelt beside her. His eyes softened, voice low. "You're safe here. Ain't nobody coming for you." Tears finally came, quiet and shaking. "He ruined me," she whispered. "Said I wasn't worth nothing anymore." Luke's jaw tightened. "Who?" She looked up, eyes glistening. "The sheriff's boy. Jeb Calhoun." Luke didn't move for a long time. Then, without a word, he stood, took his coat, and stepped outside. The door closed behind him. The next morning, Clara found him in the barn, saddling his horse. The dawn light cut through the cracks in the wall. His rifle was strapped to the saddle. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Town," he said flatly. She stepped closer. "Don't," she whispered. "He'll kill you." Luke turned to her, eyes cold as iron. "He already killed you once." "I just mean to bring you back." He mounted up and rode out before she could stop him. The wind rose as Luke rode hard for Redstone. The sky turned grey, heavy with dust. He didn't care. Every hoofbeat thundered with the memory of Clara's shaking voice. Every mile burned hotter in his chest. By noon, he reached town. The saloon doors creaked open as he stepped inside. The crowd went still. Jeb Calhoun sat at the bar, laughing loud, whiskey in hand. When he saw Luke, his grin faltered. "Well, look who crawled in from the dirt," he sneered. "Didn't know ghosts could ride horses." Luke walked to the bar, slow, deliberate. He reached into his pocket and placed a single bullet on the counter. "This one's for Clara Mayfield," he said. Jeb laughed nervously now. "That girl? Hell, she was—" He didn't finish. Luke's hand moved faster than sound. The gun roared once. The saloon filled with smoke. Jeb Calhoun fell from his stool, eyes wide, whiskey spilling across the floorboards. The sheriff burst through the door, hand on his pistol. "What in God's name?" Luke turned, eyes calm. "Your boy's debt's been paid." The sheriff froze, saw the bullet hole in his son's chest, and lowered his gun. "Get out," he growled, voice breaking. Luke holstered his revolver and stepped back into the sunlight, the town too afraid to speak. By dusk, the canyon echoed with silence again. Luke rode home slow, dust rising behind him. The sky bled orange and red. He looked tired, not from guilt, but from the weight of everything that had come before. Clara was waiting by the fence. When she saw him, she ran forward, fear twisting her face. "Luke, tell me you didn't—" He dismounted, eyes unreadable. "It's done." She shook her head, tears streaming. "You shouldn't have risked your life for me." He looked at her for a long time. "Didn't risk it," he said softly. "Just gave it meaning." Then he turned and walked toward the house. She stood there, breath trembling, watching him disappear into the doorway, the man who had carried his silence like a coffin until he found something worth breaking it for. Weeks passed. The whispers in Redstone changed. They stopped calling her damaged. Now they called her Mrs. Carson. She worked the ranch beside him, fixing fences, riding out into the pastures, cooking when the day cooled. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't, but every silence between them felt different now, full instead of empty. One morning she found him on the porch, whittling as always. She brought him coffee, the steam curling in the cold air. "Luke," she said quietly, "do you ever think about the past?" He nodded. "Every day." "And does it hurt?" He smiled faintly. "Not anymore." She sat beside him, the sunrise spilling over the fields. The wind carried the scent of wild sage and morning dew. For the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid. The ranch stretched wide and quiet, the horses grazing under a pale sky. Luke took her hand, rough against soft, and for a moment the world was still. "Clara," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "out here things break easy, but they can mend too." She looked at him, at the man who bought her not to own her but to save her, and smiled through her tears. "Then let's keep mending." The wind rustled through the grass, carrying away the ghosts that once haunted them both. And somewhere beyond the hills, the memory of Redstone's laughter faded into nothing. Clara Mayfield, no, Clara Carson, stood tall beside the man who had seen her not as damaged goods, but as the only soul worth saving in a world built on ruin. Sometimes the quietest men carry the loudest kind of love, and sometimes justice doesn't come with a badge, it comes with silence, a bullet and a heart brave enough to care.